The Stars Beckon. Chapter 4. As it turned out, it was a simple issue with Eli's implants, though the answer proved a bit more challenging. Buried inside his cranium were a number of cybernetic enhancements tied into his nervous system at multiple points. It gave him quite a number of advantages. But while the computers aboard Magellan were all specially shielded against the unusual conditions that occurred during translation, his brain was most decidedly not. Had whoever designed and implanted the various devices known beforehand the shielding would be needed, they could have easily adapted the devices before grafting them onto his thalamus, parietal lobe, and medulla oblongata. But to do so now would require cracking open his skull and digging them back out. No one particularly relished that idea, least of all Eli himself. Luckily, Kurt came up with a workaround solution to the problem. He took one of the spare suit helmets and added a Faraday cage analog to shield the implants. It was bulky and looked faintly ridiculous, but more importantly, it worked. They had yet to test it under actual translation conditions. However, the three men were confident it would solve the issue neatly. With that dealt with, Will ordered Nekasa to make for the beacon. It didn't take long to close in on its location, and as the ship hovered nearby, he turned to the crew. "Kurt, you and Sujin suit up," he told them before turning his gaze to the Iranian. "You too, Khadija." She stared back at him in sudden panic. "Me?" "Yes, you," he replied. "We need to know if it's safe to bring back aboard. There may be anti-tampering commands built in or booby traps. And since you're our computer expert, finding that out is your job." "I don't even speak alien," she protested, "and I've never done an EVA before." She started backing away, as if she was looking for an exit, though of course there was none to be found. "Then now is the perfect time to get your feet wet," the captain said with a smile. "And besides, you'll be tethered to Sujin while you're out there. She'll keep you safe. Just make sure you do exactly what she says, no more and no less." The Korean scientist went to her side. "Don't worry, it will be fine," she assured her. "Let's get you suited up," she said, leading her back to the storage area next to the airlock. Will turned his attentions to Kurt. "You're still certain you'll be able to mimic the beacon's transmission before we take it offline?" The engineer nodded. "I have already programmed one of our probes. We have been recording the beacon's transmission for months now, and copying the signal was quite a simple matter. Nekasa will launch the probe when we are ready to make the switch." "Excellent," he told him. If whoever put it there saw it was no longer transmitting, they might come back to investigate, and I would like to avoid that. "Go ahead and get suited up and we'll get started." Kurt gave him a nod and headed off to join the others as he settled back in the command chair. Therese spoke up from her location. "And what am I supposed to be doing during all of this?" "Monitor their vitals with Graham while they're on EVA," he answered, after giving it a moment's thought. The young woman pouted at his response, and he chuckled in understanding. "Don't worry, your turn will come. If we do manage to find aliens out there, you're likely to have the hardest job of all." Mollified for the moment, she moved to assist the astrobiologist, making sure to keep a safe distance between them. The telepath never allowed herself to get close enough to someone and risk accidental brushing, even though she routinely kept herself covered from head to toe. Will understood her reasons, but there wasn't that much room aboard Magellan, and he couldn't help but wonder what would happen when she inevitably bumped into someone by accident. "All right, Nekasa, let's get set up," he told the pilot. "I want no surprises for this one." "Me either," she agreed as they got to work. The beacon itself was unremarkable in appearance, an elongated spheroid roughly 2 meters long and 1 meter across, its casing a dull gray in the strange light of hyperspace. Kurt and Sujin jetted carefully across the distance between the object and the ship, with Khadija clipped in tightly on Sujin's harness. "You're doing great," the scientist reassured her. "Just hang limp and let me do the driving." The hacker nodded in reply, before realizing yet again the gesture wouldn't be seen from the outside of her polarized helmet. "Understood," Khadija said on the intercom, as she focused on her breathing. Hyperventilating could run through your suit's oxygen supply in fairly short order, if one wasn't careful. "Magellan, we are approximately 40 meters from the beacon," Kurt reported. "Still no signs of access panels or other features." "Understood," Will replied from the ship. Keep the comlink open and report what you see. Copy, the German answered as they moved closer at a leisurely pace, giving their propulsion controls brief taps to slow their approach. It was an agonizingly drawn-out process, but gradually they came to rest roughly a meter away from the beacon. Magellan, we have arrived on station, Kurt reported. Beginning external inspection. Will acknowledged the report as the engineer began carefully maneuvering around the object, shining his suit light across the surface as he worked with cautious deliberation. After making one circuit around the narrow axis, he changed directions and went from pole to pole, scrutinizing every inch of its surface, before finally returning to the others. Nothing, he reported, not even any visible seams. It appears as if it was cast in one solid piece. Strange, Sujin replied. You'd think there would be a maintenance port at the very least. Perhaps they do not feel it is necessary, Kurt suggested, before removing one of the sensors from his harness. Checking for ferromagnetism, electrical output, and radioactivity, he informed them, as he inched his way closer. He halted once more, within arm's reach of the device as he began his scans, watching the readings as he edged his way around once again, grimacing as he finally put away the sensor. I am detecting low levels of radioactivity and electrical generation, but it is heavily shielded, he said at last. I suspect we may have to open it up to learn much more. Quite the mystery, Sujin said before turning to look at Khadija. Our turn now, she told her as they exchanged positions with the engineer. I'll see if I can determine the material the casing is made from, and then it will be time for you to work your magic. Without some sort of port to plug into? Or a wireless signal? You're asking a lot, the hacker said without much confidence. Still, we must try, the scientist told her, as she aimed the bulky piece of equipment attached to her propulsion unit at the beacon. Stay clear while I scan the beacon, Sujin told her, as she unclipped Khadija from her harness and attached a tether. Kurt gently guided her back away from the beacon as the Korean began scanning the casing, her eyes watching the display as the various elements began appearing on the readout. She was silent for several minutes while she worked before turning off her scanner and staring at the results. The casing is composed of some sort of exotic metalloceramic compound, she said at last. I'm reading traces of silicon, ruthenium, cobalt, tungsten, and gallium of all things, plus a host of other elements. It's like nothing I've ever seen before, she marveled. Interesting, Kurt mused before tapping Khadija on the shoulder. It is your turn now. Perhaps there is something embedded in the signal, he suggested. I'll give it a shot, she replied as she brought her specialized computer up and began tapping away. It didn't take long to lock onto the beacon's transmission as she got to work, trying various search algorithms before finally putting the device away. Nothing, she said in disgust. The signal is going out clean. No sideband, no leakage, nothing being piggybacked on a carrier wave. Nothing. Kurt sighed heavily. I was afraid of this. It appears we have a decision to make. He tapped at his controls as he raised the ship. Magellan, I am sorry to report we have learned little in our examination. The only way to learn more will be to bring it aboard and open it up. Is it safe? Will asked from the ship. I cannot say for certain, he replied. All I can tell you is that we will learn nothing more, unless we do so. There was a long pause before the captain's voice finally returned. We'll have to risk it then. If it is a booby trap, better we find out now instead of 100 light years away. Go ahead and bring it on board while we launch the probe. Copy, Kurt told him as he unhooked a small cargo net from his propulsion unit. Help me secure the beacon, and then we will take it back with us to the ship. And hope it doesn't kill us, Khadija muttered as they got to work. It was a simple enough process to secure the device and return it to the ship. They carried it to Kurt's workshop and placed it on his bench before he ordered them all out. Khadija started to protest, curious to see what was inside, but Will silenced her complaints with a grim explanation. It's for our protection, he told her. If it is booby-trapped, hopefully the bulkhead separating Kurt from the rest of us will limit the damage. She blinked in surprise. But what about Kurt? She asked him. It's a risk, he said slowly, but he knew that going in. That's why he insisted on doing it himself. But, she stammered, as Eli appeared at her side. Let it go, he said softly. The mission is what matters. All of us need to accept the reality that we are expendable, if it's necessary for the mission's success. The Iranian hacker looked horrified as he shrugged. Pray for him if it helps you cope, he suggested. She moved away from the Israeli, sickened by the realization, as the rest of the crew found ways to busy themselves while their engineer probed the mysteries of the alien device. It was a short time later when the hatch unbolted and Kurt stepped back into the cabin. Come see for yourselves, he told them, shaking his head as if he was having a hard time believing what he had found. The rest of the crew followed behind as he led them into the cramped space of his workshop, though Therese waited out in the corridor, unwilling to risk contact. What did you find? Will asked him. It is a beacon, Kurt answered, pointing at the disassembled device on the table. We knew that, the captain said after a pause, as he looked at the engineer strangely. Nein, you do not understand, he said in a rush as the crew raised their eyebrows. When Kurt started slipping back into his native German, it was a clear sign his emotions were running on overdrive. I mean, that is all it is. You have a power supply here, he told them, pointing at a cylindrical device. And a transmitter here, he said, indicating another component. Das ist alles. That is all. The power supply is a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, similar to ones we have been placing in satellites and probes since the 1960 SS, but other than that, it is no more complicated than Sputnik. Nekesa shook her head. You mean it does nothing else? Nothing at all, he agreed. But what's the point? Graham asked him. Why go to all that trouble to place a beacon if it just tells you where you've already been? Breadcrumbs, Eli suggested. Someone is marking their trail. I do not know, Kurt answered, as he picked up another piece of the device. But perhaps this may tell us something. It is an information storage device of some kind, though I do not recognize the configuration. It may contain data that will shed some light on who placed it here. Will looked over at Khadija and Sujin. I want the three of you to keep working on this. I want to know everything there is to know about it. Run every test imaginable, and then run every test unimaginable. I want that thing examined down to the component atoms, and I definitely want to know what's in that storage device. Khadija looked at the lump of alien circuitry. I'll do my best, she said dubiously. Their captain ran his fingers through his hair. We'll need to transmit everything we've learned back to mission control. I don't know what they'll make of it, but I can almost guarantee what their orders will be. What? Therese asked from the corridor. He turned to face her. That it's time to earn our pay. Nekesa, start plotting our course to the next beacon. Aye, Captain, she said quietly as they looked at one another with both eagerness and trepidation.